Hello, everyone. It's Shea Stanley from Little Steps Asia, and this is our Insider series. Today, we are talking about something that seems so simple, but actually affects everything underneath, and that is friendships at a very early age. As a parent, as an educator, everybody worries about this, and today we're going to dive deep with our friends over at EtonHouse. Hey, guys.
Hi.
We'll be introducing
Hi.
our experts. We've got two fantastic individuals that have a background in education from all over the world who's going to bring us to the surface on what we need to know about early years friendships. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guests. We have Natalie and Shauna. Shauna, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and yeah.
Everyone, I'm Shauna Parsons. So I'm originally from Wales in the UK, but I've been teaching internationally for 10 years, 8 years in the Middle East, and now 2 years in Singapore. I'm currently a year 2 class teacher and also the head of the lower primary school in EtonHouse Orchard.
Excellent. And Natalie, let's hear about your experience as well.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Natalie, and I'm the senior principal at EtonHouse Upper Bukit, Timah. I have been with the EtonHouse family for 14 years now. And when I'm not at work, my other full-time job is being a mom to my 2 young children. My daughter is 4 and my son is 6 years old. So everything that I'll be sharing today comes from 2 places. So my years working with children and families in school, and also my very humbling experience of trying to figure this out.
Excellent. Well, we're going to have a lot to chat about. There's so much to dive into with friendships, and I like the way that we're going to be taking this on together, both from an education point of view as well as from the parental point of view, because all parents worry about this. So it's going to be a very, very good topic to explore. So before we get started, I just wanted to remind our audience of a couple of things. So we are going to be chatting about different topics. Feel free to ask questions on the various social media channels. We'll make sure that we get our experts to answer those as well. And then a couple of reminders about EtonHouse as well. You can book a tour anytime to go visit the schools. You've also got the Experience Day that's coming up in May. So we'll be sure to include the links in for that. And enrollment discounts, a June 1 enrollment discount as well. So we'll make sure and include all that information so that after the you can make sure and get all those details as well. So let's talk friendships, shall we? So I just wanted to just start off the conversation from more of a painting the picture point of view. You go into the playground, you see a bunch of kids playing. What would be the big surprises that a parent might not see that educators do see that's happening on that playground in regards to friendships?
Sometimes, especially in early childhood friendships, we often come across parents who are worried about their child maybe not forming a friendship group and that they might be playing maybe alongside children a lot more rather than with a solid group of children. But as educators, we know in very early friendships, this is completely normal. Friendships are fluid, they're changeable, they might play with somebody different every day, and that's fine. They're not going to be maybe playing fully together, but over time then they will start to develop these friendships. They'll watch and copy each other and gradually begin to interact more. But I think especially in early friendships, we see a lot of these fluid, play-based sort of scenarios.
Well, I know from my personal experience at home, you bring out one cool new toy and everybody's arguing over it. And then you've got, they're laughing 5 minutes later. And, it's a very interesting time in those early years. So I don't know if we could maybe just talk a little bit more about friendships in those early years. Let's start maybe with the toddlers and work our way up. What would you consider the key elements of friendships, and what you guys see in terms of the really young ones, the toddlers?
I think maybe I can jump in here. I think just as Shauna has mentioned, the early years, the friendships are very fluid, right? Very play-based in the moment. And I think this brought back to an example, with my child coming home from school, holding a very tiny piece of crumpled paper. And it was actually an unsticky sticker. And she actually brought it to bed, brought it to dinner, and she told me very seriously, she's like, "Mama, my friend gave this to me," in all seriousness. And I know that meant so much to her. But sometimes as adults, we forget how uncomplicated friendships are at this age. It could change day to day, but there's no long histories or no long bonds that they need to have, that moment that my friend chose me means the world to them. And I think from the preschool years, from it being very fluid, very play-based, we do know that when children move on to primary school, you start to notice that preferences start to emerge, right? There are smaller, there are tighter groups. It's no longer who's playing next to me anymore, but children start to choose actively who they want to spend time with. And when they get older as well, I think the friendships also start to mean a little bit different about your identity, about trust, about loyalty. And that also extends out into the social world, right? Like who is going to be playing like maybe Roblox after school, because the social world gets so much bigger. And I think that's when the foundation that we build at home really start to matter.
Excellent. Do you have anything to add onto that, Shauna?
I agree with what Natalie is saying. In later primary, I think this is when we see the friendships start to deepen emotionally. They become more interested in peer approval, and that sense of belonging and identity comes into play a little bit. More about shared ideas, shared interests, and yes, forming more stable friendships and close-knit groups, where in the early years it is much more fluid and moment to moment. But as they go older, there's a stronger need for self-expression within their friendship groups as well.
What's so interesting is I find, and we're going to dive into, the parents themselves, and some tips around that and how to get involved and not get involved and what's healthy around that. So we'll go into all those details. But I think one of the things that it's important to know is what is normal and what's not normal in those early years. And I think as an adult, sometimes we forget how the little minds are thinking or developing. So maybe you could just break down, what is normal in terms of friendships when you're talking about, say, toddlers and then kids and then upper primary, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, just so that we can understand what is normal and what's too mature for our own understanding. Maybe, Natalie, do you want to break it down?
Yes, I think the friendships really differ from age to age. And I think one thing that really stands to me and I really believe is that both as an educator and as a mom is that when we're young, the children see us as their whole world. They look to us and we really shape, the parents really play a huge part in shaping how the children see relationships, how they handle conflicts and what they think is normal and acceptable. And as parents, I think we have so much influence in the early years, but that shifts, right? Gradually it shifts. And then really quite quickly, you realize that, now the children are starting to look outward. Right? Who becomes their reference points? The friends become their reference points. They're going to be thinking, what do my friends think? What do they do? What do they wear? And I think that is completely normal. That is completely normal as part of growing up. But it also means now as parents that the foundation that we built now in these early years really, really matter. Because by the time they're turning to their friends for answers, we want to make sure that we have already given them the strong foundation, right? Our values of empathy, the confidence to make good choices.
Excellent. Yes, I think that baseline is what's so important. But even more so is just kind of understanding, the temperament of our children as well. I think that's something that's interesting. Probably from your point of view, you get to see, we have just a few children in our home, but you're seeing children from a variety of different backgrounds and variety of different temperaments. And so some kids are shy at making, friends. Some people are a little bit more, developing other habits. Some are so easy. They just walk into any crowd and make friends very easily. I think as a mom myself, I've got one child that does it very easily and one that doesn't. And that's been a struggle to kind of understand and try to get the foundations that I need to prepare them. So just from an education point of view, what would you tell the parents of those different types of children about what to worry about and what not to worry about, and any tips you might have in terms of preparing them when their kids are young?
Yeah, I think, like you're saying, especially for shy children, parents worry maybe that they're not socializing, they're not communicating with peers. But I think the thing is, they will always find their way. They're just maybe not as outspoken, not as outgoing as other peers, but they will find like-minded people with similar interests, similar personality traits, and they will make friends in their own way, even if as a parent, from your point of view, it doesn't look like that. And we always support that in school, encourage the children to work in groups, collaborate. And as they build these skills, then it becomes a little bit easier for them to go up to new people and ask, can I play? And that comes with confidence, but also with age and development.
Definitely.
Maybe just to add on a little bit about the child development, right? From children at the younger age, they play solitary play, right? They play on their own. And then as they grow up, they start to play alongside people. We call that parallel play. And I think I do see this, and I have similar experiences with my own children at home. I think they are distinctively quite different. So my daughter, who is 4, plays with everybody, quite unbothered, but that friendships shift all the time. And then my son, who is 6 years old, has a bit more of a consistent group of smaller friendship groups. So even though we're in the same household, they are at different points in that friendship journey, and that's very normal. And back to the question about, what are children going to learn? Is that normal? Is that it's less about what friendships, whether or not friendships last now. It's more about what children are practicing through it, right? They're developing skills like turn taking, developing empathy, having that communication and that sense of belonging when they make friends. And these are the skills that are being built quietly, naturally, through all the interactions that our children will have.
Definitely. There's a lot of skills, that I think we forget are formed on the playground. It's interesting to witness, I'm sure, from a bird's eye view as well. So I want to get into some of the challenges that we see with friendships. And this is a hot topic. And I find as a parent, sometimes it's triggering to watch your kids struggle in certain ways, or maybe that you feel like they've been bullied or taken advantage of, or they come home with the dramatic, I'm not friends with that person anymore. I mean, you kind of hear a lot of different things. I'm curious to understand your advice on the reframing side of friendships. When friendships are difficult, what do you recommend in terms of reframes?
I can jump in here. So I think when friendships become difficult is a real learning experience for children. First of all, they're managing big emotions, maybe naming them for the first time: frustration, jealousy, sadness, anger. And as educators and parents, we're there to help them, support them with this, but not to tell them they shouldn't be feeling that way. It's okay to feel jealous in a friendship. It's completely natural at the beginning, but it's also helping support them. So listen to them. I think that's such a big thing. I think as parents sometimes, and educators, teachers, we jump in and try to solve every problem for the child, where first of all, listen to them, give them that space to communicate what happened, validate their emotions. You can say, I know that sounds really upsetting, but then help them work through it. What could we do next time? What are the next steps? Asking open questions rather than directing them in, okay, this is what we should do. Also encouraging the perspective, thinking about how do you think the other child felt in that situation, in that argument, can really help. But knowing that the child has the answer within them. You can support them and guide them, but they know how to solve the problem.
So some of the core things that I've seen, and I'm just curious if we could kind of break it down a little bit more. I think the biggest one that we see in the early years is that exclusion side, where maybe they were friends one day and they're not friends the next, and not getting invited to the birthday party, all of these things that happen that may or may not be out of, in the control of the parents or the school. So in terms of friendships in those early years, focusing on the exclusion reframe itself, what tips would you have for the mom or dad that the child comes home and says, I'm feeling left out?
But I think that is something really difficult for any parent to listen to, because I think naturally as a parent, you would want to remove and fix all problems for your children, right? And how much we have to hold restraint and stepping in and trying to fix things, right? Or was someone unkind, let me manage it. If there's a conflict, I'll fix it for you. So I think that is our instincts as parents, even though, we have that fierce protectiveness and that love for our children. We know that overstepping and overprotecting the children can slowly chip away the confidence that the children might have. Even though it may not be the message that we're sending home with our child, sometimes children might feel like, oh, is this something too big for me to handle on my own? And when we're talking about the children that I have at home with my own children, they are distinctively different So one is in flight mode, when there is a situation that makes him uncomfortable, he shuts down, he suffers in silence. He doesn't speak. You literally have to draw out the information from him. So at home, we actually do a lot of role playing, a lot of different scenarios. And it's a lot of practice, a lot of hard work. Whereas for my daughter, who is 4, actually very expressive in terms of her needs and her wants. So you don't have to be guessing. But at the same time, it's about a different work altogether. You have to help her with that managing of the emotions, the emotional regulation, managing disappointments, and just being confident with herself. So I think with the different needs of the children and understanding their personalities, we have to use different techniques, different skills, a different tool belt altogether in order to work with these children.
Definitely. I think with the exclusion, I mean, it is something that kind of punches you, right, as a parent. And I'm curious to know, is there a hard line on where the tools that you talk about are super useful, the role playing and the naming your emotions and some of these things. But when would a parent kind of feel that they should take action, versus sit back and let the child navigate with what you have practiced? Do you have any advice for that? Because I know that a lot of parents do struggle with this.
Yes, I think that it is a hard balance when to step back and when to step in. I would say if it's a repeating occurrence, if you think this is happening a lot, or you can see your child is in a lot of distress and not able to solve this and not able to navigate it by themselves, I think that's the time you step in as a parent and communicate with the school. I think that's so important as well, having that open communication with the teacher so you can work on the next steps. But I think in those kind of situations, it is appropriate then to step in, especially I think with the younger children who will need a bit of help with that.
I think the battle between the heart and the mind is still something I face. I don't think it fully goes away, even though you know a lot about child development, right? I think the difference I tell myself is 2 things. One is that stepping back doesn't mean that we're stepping away, right? So when, of course, as Shauna has mentioned, there are many instances where if a child's well-being is at risk, that's a non-negotiable, right? We have to step in, we have to help. But for the fallouts, the big feelings, it's probably where as parents, we can pause before we react. And the second thing that I remind myself a lot is that we take on the role as a coach, not as a solver. So we try to provide a language for the children, not the answers. We try to guide them. We don't try and control the outcome. And as mentioned earlier, right, overhelping can also quietly chip away at these children's confidence. And all of this, of course, is a lot easier said than done. I've been put to the test continuously. I just thought to share quite a recent incident that happened in school last year with my son. I thought it would be an encouraging story for many of us here. So my son came home one of the days and mentioned that a friend had taken his toy figurine and didn't return it. So of course, as a mom, and I heard that, I was like, okay, we went on the whole list about being responsible, taking care of his belongings, you need to make sure it comes home. And then he was like, okay, mom, I'll get it back tomorrow. He was very confident about that. So no issues, didn't make a big issue out of it. But tomorrow came. And the following day and the day after, and each time the friend did not return it and he did not get his toy back. So at home every night before bed, we role played. Okay, we went through the different scenarios. Okay, what did your friend say today? And he didn't know how to respond. So we had to practice with him how you could respond in that instance. Think about what your friend might say tomorrow and how you could respond to that. So every day, my husband and I, when we picked him up from school, we waited eagerly every single end of the day and see whether we would celebrate the return of the figurine. But this went on for 3 full weeks of school, 15 school days. And every day was met with different challenges, whether my son couldn't bring himself to say it, or he tried and he was met with disappointment. And of course, being an educator, it's easier to have just called the school and just have the teacher facilitated it and just get it back, but we made a conscious decision not to, because the focus shifted. It was no longer on the friend or the figurine. It was on my son. It was encouraging him, cheering him on, making sure we practiced different scenarios together and making sure he believed that we knew he could do it. And as the end of the school year came, we were actually quite resigned that we were not going to get it back. But then on the 31st of December, I remember this so clear because it was New Year's Eve. He came to school in that morning and that there in his cubby hole was his toy figurine. No, and I think looking back at the 15 days of just pure roller coaster of emotions, I think it was worth every single moment, that every single tear, every single disappointment that he faced, because we know that when we put in the hard work and we don't give up, he will get there. And it's a lesson that no teacher or parent could have given it to him, right? He had to experience it himself.
Such a good story. I'm glad he got the figurine back as well.
Yeah.
They're such big deals when they're so young.
I know.
So in terms of another kind of area I think a lot of people struggle with is the switching of social groups. So, 1 minute your child's in this group and then they've been pushed out or they've moved groups, and then you're wondering, wait, why are you not best friends with these kids anymore? Or, why have they moved on? Or why are you best friends with these new kids? Do you have any, I guess, advice for parents that see this, or ways of looking at that as the norm, or, navigating that?
I think it is hard as a parent because you don't know which child they're going to come home and say is their best friend that day, and that might change every single day. And I think that is hard to navigate, but it is completely normal. I think they are getting to know themselves, and as they get to know themselves first, then their friendships will change. Maybe their interests have changed, maybe their personalities have developed, and things in their old friendship group maybe don't suit them anymore. Or it might not even be as deep as that. I think as parents and teachers, sometimes we look into what's happened, and nothing might have happened at all. But just as fluid as friendships can be, they've just mixed up. I think in a classroom, we see it all the time. There are often children who maybe 2 or 3 that really stick together, and we have those kind of friendships. But among the rest, they're all happy to play with each other, happy to socialize with one another. The play dates, I hear one day, it's someone, then someone else. So they're forming new friendships and these skills all the time.
Excellent. Is there anything you want to add on to that, Natalie?
I fully agree with Shauna. I said that in the preschool years, we do see that friendships change from the pre-nursery, from the toddlers to the kindergarteners. And it's very normal when children shift the different friends around depending on the interests or depending on things that they bring to school. But one thing I think when we hear that when children are not being included in certain social circles, I think our response to our children is also very important. Instead of going down the route of, oh, nobody wants to play with you, it should be keeping it open, instead of jumping in to try and resolve the problem, really just being a listening ear to the children and understanding first before we even try and resolve it together. So I think it's important about parents' response to what children share with them.
Well, that's a perfect segue into the next area that we're going to be talking about, because we do want to dive a little bit deeper into parents, because there is a lot on parents during this period when related to friendships. I like the metaphor of just being on the sidelines. You've got your coach, the educator's got the school, and then here you have the parents that are yelling, screaming, and then you've got parents that are sitting there quietly. Some parents aren't even there, so you've got all these different types of scenarios playing out on the sports field, and it's kind of like, well, which one is right, or is it a timing thing? So I do want to dive a little bit deeper into our involvement as parents into the various friendship cycles in the early years. So I wanted to ask, what, we hear a lot about, the kids taking on things that they see at home or with adult behaviors. So I wanted to understand from your side, what are the subtle adult behaviors that have the biggest impact on kids and these school settings, let's say?
I think the role that adults play is really important. Children learn how to make friends by watching adults make friends. And I think especially our tone of voice, our language, and also how adults react to conflict or respond to conflict rather, calmly and not reacting with the emotions. Also, I think when it comes to fixing friendships, when there has been an argument or a problem, I think it's really important that children see adults apologizing, taking accountability, and that's how they will learn to fix their own friendships then as well, and communicating respectfully, even if it is a situation and they want to say no and they're clear with their boundaries, but they're doing it in a kind and respectful way.
I think that's right. I think the kids mirror
sometimes
what our own things we need to work on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Another area that I just wanted to kind of touch on is maybe, the parents' role in terms of helping kids model specific behaviors. Like what are those besides, you mentioned apologizing and taking accountability, naming emotions. Are there any other kind of areas that as parents we should really keep an eye on?
I think we talk a little bit about inclusion. We also talk a lot about respect and also kindness. I think this is probably the three core things that carry any kind of relationship. And even though I think school, the school setting is very different, at home, I think parents can also emulate the same environment where, parents can take children on more play dates, to different social circles. So it may not just be with your child's best friend, but children are also observing us. Okay. I like this phrase called it's not taught, it's more caught, right? So children are constantly observing what adults do, how we talk to other people, whether we speak positively about people. One thing also living in a multiracial culture, society in Singapore, right? We talk a lot about celebrating the differences, the different cultures, the different abilities, just different ways of being. And the wider the circle of people your children feels comfortable with, or the more confident they will be in navigating the new social situations. And I also believe that when children are in the environments that consistently model that respect and inclusion, so both at home and in school, they would naturally start to carry those values into their own friendships in the future.
Excellent. Stepping over the line. I know we've all done it as parents, as educators, just kind of gotten too involved when we maybe didn't need to. Let's just say you've done it. You've done it as a parent. You jumped in. The kid notices. And I'm curious to understand, what are the negatives of us going too far, intervening in the friendships, jumping in where we shouldn't be? I think it's important for parents to understand what I don't want to say dangers, but what are the issues that arise from us being too aggressive, getting too involved?
I think you're then not giving the children the opportunity to learn for themselves. They're not going to develop the problem-solving skills, how to express their needs, and also how to set boundaries on their own. If they know maybe someone at home or the teacher is always going to do it for them, they'll solve the problem for them, then we risk not teaching them the skills to be able to navigate these problems in friendships and relationships in the future.
So we constantly talk about, that tool belt of skills, right? That we want to equip children so that they are able to navigate all the relationships that they encounter in the future. So again, we are not able to control what happens in school or in our child's social world every day. So if we rescue once, children may not have that skills to practice. But when we do, we give them that time and that space, in that safe space to be able to experience it themselves. Then we are able to make sure that they're adding more skills to their tool belt. Then they will have more confidence. They have the resilience to handle it.
All right. So parents, we got to step back sometimes. Before I move into more of the community focus, because I am curious to see, Natalie, a little bit more about how the school and the home works together. But I did want to just touch on one thing that you mentioned, Natalie, about how you had I believe you had one child that doesn't communicate as much about the feelings, or for those parents where they have the children, they come home from school and they don't get much. How was your day? Like they're just not communicating. You can't get much. Do you have any advice for them in terms of helping them along? I mean, they're still dealing with the same friendship issues that the one that is communicating is, but they're not telling us.
Yeah, I think working with this group of children who may not be as expressive, they need a bit more time or coaching to be able to share. It's nothing about not feeling safe. Some children's personality is just that it's more difficult for them to open up. I do feel that it takes a lot of patience, and for parents, is to encourage parents not to give up as well, because it's easier to just tell the child, you shouldn't be feeling this way, you should be doing this. It becomes also prescriptive. But every child is different. So I think you just have to really understand your child, know how long it takes and what works for them, what makes them feel safe, what makes them feel comfortable. It doesn't have to be a formal sit down and I'm going to talk to you and unpack about what happened today. It could be done over something that your child likes to do. If he likes to go cycling, take him out to cycle. And at the same time, you can try and broach the topic. So something that is comfortable for the child. And one resource that we actually use at home as well, and I thought to share with all the parents, it's this picture book titled What to Say When You Don't Know What to Say by Davina Bell. So we use this book so much when my son was younger because it's like a guide to navigating life's little moments and big emotions through everyday scenarios. And it's a lovely book with beautiful illustrations. And what I love most about this book is that it helps children find the words for those uncomfortable social moments. Moments where they just don't know what to do, they don't know what to say, just like what the title is. And when parents actually read it together with your child, it opens up the conversation naturally. So it's not like a sit down lesson, like I have to teach you what to do.
That's a really good tip. We'll make sure and include that as well. Yeah, good, very good book tip. We love those. Shauna, do you have anything to add?
I think I agree with Natalie. Each child is different, and it's important to stay calm, give them the space they need, and also think about, like you say, if they're not comfortable in expressing it in a formal sit-down chat, how else can you approach it? Could you ask them maybe to draw a picture of what happened in their day? Or maybe when you're doing the bedtime story, you can talk about how their day was, especially if you think there might be something on their mind. But stay consistent with them. I think they will end up opening up in their own way. But I think if you go in too hard and too forceful, it will only make them draw back even further. So I think it's just important to give them time and space to do it in their own way.
Very good tips. Well, let's dive into a bit more about the community, because obviously it takes a village when it comes to this. And you've got the school side, and then of course you've got the home side as well. So I just wanted to understand a little bit more about how educators and parents, families work together to really form that environment where kids feel safe, where they feel included, where they feel inspected. What are those tips around that for how to make it all work? Maybe Natalie, you want to start with that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm quite glad that this question was asked because I think I sit on both sides of the conversation as a principal and a mom. And I can tell you that when the home and the school are pointing in the same direction, I think children can feel it. They experience the same messages about, respect, inclusion, kindness, both at home and in school. And that consistency is actually very powerful. So at EtonHouse, I mean, in terms of the environment, right, we work with children in both large groups and small groups. And we give children opportunities to work with different children who has different learning styles, different styles of working. And they learn to appreciate each other's strengths and they work through the differences together. So I think that gives the children an opportunity to not work with the same children all the time. Since we do inquiry-based approach, it's also another opportunity for children to share their thinking with the educators. And educators create such a respectful environment that children feel valued and they welcome all different kinds of ideas, perspectives. And at home, I think parents can also do the same. We mentioned about going for play dates, widening your social circles, talking positively about people, celebrating differences. And I think these values would really contribute to children's tool belt again. When the home and the school is consistent, keeping that communication open with the teachers, I think that would really value add.
I have to ask this question because I remember this coming up a lot when my kids were young. You've got three best friends or two best friends. The start of the school starts and you find out where your classes are and there's a separation of friendships, and it's coming purposely to make sure that the cliques are not being formed and that kind of thing. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting because I, from the parents' point of view, of course, the kids are upset, the parents are upset, and then everybody's like, why is it happening? It's their best friend. So from an education point of view, what would you say are the core reasons for that beyond the obvious? And what would you tell those parents and kids that are like, why did you take away the best friend kind of moments?
I think that is a really tricky one. And I think when it comes to the time of year when you are having to make new classes and thinking about which friendships go together, it is really challenging to find a balance between true friendship, but also children that work well together. And I think the classroom-based learning is different to the playground. Even though it's play-based, you might have children that work really well together, encourage each other, challenge each other, support each other. And then you might have children who get maybe into conflict quite a lot, even though they might be best friends. Those kind of situations might come up. They might distract each other a lot, or maybe be a hindrances to one another's education. And I think it's finding that balance. But I think it is always a challenging time, because you want the child to feel safe first, and friendships are such a big part of that. But yes, I think normally if it has happened, there is normally a deeper reason. And we also always tell the parents, they'll still have opportunities on the playground to play together and keep that friendship going, but maybe in the classroom isn't the best place for them.
Makes sense. And to be honest, years later, after having experienced, those moments, you do see that new friendships were formed, and that maybe those two are better outside of the classroom. They're fantastic. They cause a ruckus and have a great time, but maybe in the classroom, they needed a bit more structure. So yeah, it's always just quite an interesting topic. You see it with camps as well, Natalie, did you have anything else to add on to that, or did we get that part covered?
No, I think that's good. I think she summed it up really well.
Cool. So in terms of the collaboration between home and school, I wanted to understand what practical tips that you would say are good ones for collaborations between home and school.
I think an open communication, honesty from both sides. I think the best school-home relationships work when you're both on the same page, and especially when a challenge or a problem has occurred, to collaborate rather than place the blame. I think sometimes it's easier maybe to say, oh, this is why it's happened. But when you work together, I think that is much more beneficial for the child, for the parents, and for the teacher, to make a nurturing, supportive environment for all. And I think the child will really see that as well, because we're modeling all the time how to deal with this. So yeah, I think that's really important.
To add on, I think in a classroom, there are many things happening in a day. Like, children are, getting in and out of, different disagreements all the time. Sometimes they resolve it on their own. Sometimes they need teacher intervention. And I think this is something that parents can also speak very openly with the class teachers, because maybe your expectations may not be aligned. Because as a parent, I may feel, oh, I can't have my children be having a disagreement or being left out or feeling excluded. Whereas as a teacher, you may feel like, oh, it's still a safe space for my child to, work through that disagreements. It could be taking a couple of days, it could be taking weeks, but that has to be aligned from home and school, because we don't want parents to feel like the teachers are not noticing or guiding the children in that. So when that is aligned between what the school is doing and what parents are, then parents can also support that at home. So I think the communication, again, Shauna mentioned, it's key. It's so important. And also aligning the beliefs and the values that what you want children to get out of in these relationships.
Excellent. Good tips. I wanted to ask one more question on this topic, and just kind of the parental involvement. I know we talked a lot about parents that kind of over jump in and get trying to figure out where the boundaries are and where the lines are. But there's a lot of busy parents out there, working parents that just miss things because of day-to-day operations, and there's the guilt that kind of comes with that. And I just wanted to give that a bit of space and see if you had ways that you would help these parents navigate, or these families navigate, the guilt, but also just life is busy.
Yes, and I think, like you say, that's it's completely normal now to have two parents that work hard to provide the life for the children that they have, and they might not be as present as they want to be. But I think as a teacher, my role is to keep them informed. If something has happened in the day, and I think that the child might go home and not tell the parent, I think it's my responsibility to tell them then, or just a drop-in message, or just to let you know this has happened today in their friendship and we talked about this. So then they know, okay, at bedtime tonight, I'll bring that up and talk about it. I think that could just help them, because there might be lots that they don't know is happening in the school day. I think by the time the child gets home, so much else has happened. It's not the first thing they're going to say. But yeah, I think from our side as well as the parent side, the communication is really important.
That's such a good tip. And I think having that trust with your school is so critical, because it is the day-to-day eyes that they're seeing the children, they're seeing the friendships, they're seeing what's going on, and just to have that communication, it relieves that guilt. It really does, if you've got that right environment in place. Definitely. So we've talked a lot about various things. When you're in it with the young kids, you're always thinking about how this is affecting the future. And that's where a lot of the fears are. Obviously, in the early years, you're laying those foundations, the skills that you get from, all the accountability and the sharing and the various skills that you're gaining. But later on down the line, friendships, I think there's that fear of, oh my gosh, they've only got one fear, or are they ever going to have a group of friends, or anything that comes along with the early years versus the later in life years. Do you have any just kind of insight or ways to kind of calm parents' worries that their children are going to have troubles navigating friendships after the early years?
I think that's why the tool belt is so important, because I think parents need to realize that the friendships are going to change and it's going to look really different. As parents, we want a smooth sailing relationships, right? We want smooth sailing friendships. They get along, best friends since preschool, but often the friendships that last the most probably be in the later part of their years. And also because maybe children, when they get into adolescence and teenagers, they begin to know what they want. Their interests change over the years. And as parents, I think we have to evolve together with our children. The way that we work with them, our relationships with them, the way we coach them, the way we hang out with them would have to evolve with time, evolve with the way that our children grow up. And again, being included in the social world, what is important to the children now? So as much as we, are a different generation to our children, we still have to keep up in a certain way to still be involved, to still stay relevant to our children. And again, with us being busy parents, when you're working full time, it's hard to catch that golden hour or that moment to really connect with the children, right? You can't say that, okay, I want to connect with you now, and then you have that moment. Sometimes it's really just a build up, just the right time and the right moment. As busy parents, I think we have to be really intentional about when we want to capture these times. Is it over dinner time? Or is it in the car ride? Or is it just, going down and picking up the letterbox and opening it up, So I think it's like all these moments that as parents, we're so busy, you come home and you just want to unwind. But at the same time, we know that we have to be so intentional to be present with the children during certain times of the day.
Excellent. Well, we have had such a good discussion, and I really appreciate it. We've talked a lot about the early years friendship. I'm sure we'll have to have a whole nother conversation about, secondary and primary, because it's all transitioning and changing. So I really appreciate you sharing the developmental, the tips, the various things from both a parent angle, but also as an educator as well. So really, really good information. I just wanted to ask one more question, and this goes to both of you. But as we wrap up, the idea of friendships, what would you say is the one piece of advice that you would like to leave families with? That put in your pocket piece of advice, one-liner, if you will. Who would like to go first on that one?
I can jump in. I think for me, friendship is a skill, not a personality trait. It takes practice, it takes time and development, and embrace the struggles. They're learning opportunities, and the children are always learning from it.
For me, if I have one thing, it's don't aim to give your children the perfect friendships. Aim to give them the skills to navigate the friendships. Because as parents, we can't control who our children will be friends with or how these friendships will unfold. But, with the skill sets and the tool belt, we can give them the language to speak up and the empathy to understand other people and the resilience to keep going. And all these skills will stay with them far beyond preschool into the adult.
Absolutely. I love the tool belt. I'm going to keep that one. Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And I know the readers of Little Steps also appreciate all these fantastic tips. Just a few reminders for everyone. This is EtonHouse. We have learned lots of things around friendship. If you want to explore a little bit more about EtonHouse, they've got an open day that's going to be coming up. It's an experience day coming up in May. You've also got your your tours, which you can book at any time, and get all of your questions answers. There's schools all over Singapore. We'll be including everything in the notes so that you can make sure and get that. And for those that are actively applying, there is a discount if you do apply before June 1st. So make sure you take advantage of that. And again, we'll put that information in the notes as well. So thank you so much, Shauna. Thank you, Natalie. And thank you, EtonHouse. And we will hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.